Kamala Harris's presidential campaign has had an incredibly successful start. Over the last month, she has successfully unified the Democratic Party base, has positioned herself outside of all the baggage that comes with being Joe Biden's vice president, and she is traveling the country in full force, uniting and energizing a large part of an anti-Trump coalition. And her success is starting to show up in the poll numbers. Now, I don't normally record on Sunday nights like I'm recording now, but there was a poll out from NBC and CBS, but I'm going to go over the NBC poll in great detail here and kind of talk about what the findings were and showcasing how Kamala's performance on the campaign trail, in the debate, her ads, how they are all coming together in formulating a winning coalition against Donald Trump come November. It's looking pretty good for her. So let's go over the top line first. So top line, Harris is leading Donald Trump by 5 points, 49 to 44 in a two-candidate race. If you include third-party votes, third parties, then the lead expands to 6 points instead of plus 5. This is a massive shift from where the race was just 3 months ago. In July, when Joe Biden was still running for president, if you can even remember that, so much has changed since then, Donald Trump was leading Joe Biden 45 to 43. And if we look back in the history of these NBC polls for the entirety of the 2024 presidential cycle, the Democrat, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, neither of them have ever led Donald Trump in any poll since 2023, July of 2023, a full year ago. And that's how much momentum has been sucked out of Donald Trump's sails with the rise of Kamala Harris. And one of the big things that played into the rise of Kamala Harris was her really good debate performance. We did a whole breakdown on the show about the debate and all the different things that each party said, and we recommend you go watch that. And what was painfully obvious was that Harris was prepared. She was prepared for that debate. Donald Trump simply wasn't. Donald Trump performed probably the worst in his entire career, and Harris made him look like the fool he is. When we look at how voters responded to the debate, it was extremely clear that voters wanted to see more of Harris, and a lot of them saw more and saw what they wanted to see. So after the debate, 29% of voters said that they were more likely to support Kamala Harris after the debate. Only 12% of voters who watched the debate said that they were more likely to support Donald Trump. 57% of voters said there was no difference. That's kind of baked into the case. America's pretty divided. A lot of us know how we're going to vote no matter what. But the fact that 29% of people were able to come around and say, you know what, no, now I'm even more likely to go vote for Harris. That's not a good sign for Donald Trump. And that's what's coming into these numbers, how we're switching from 43% for Joe Biden just 3 months ago, now 49% for Kamala Harris. It's because of moments like that, these key inflection points in the campaign, whether it be the DNC, whether it be the debate, these key moments is what make or break candidates. And Trump obviously broke that night. Okay. And now another big aspect of this is that Kamala Harris's approval rating has jumped through the absolute roof. Pretty shockingly and quickly, actually. Her approval rating is now positive. She's at a +3 approval rating right now. She is currently sitting at a 48% approval rating with a 45% disapproval. That's the highest her approval rating has been since January 2021. Okay, we have seen a 20-point swing in her favorability rating over the past 3 months. And it's because she's now going out into the national stage, giving speeches at the DNC, performing well in the debate. This is the largest swing in net approval since George Bush's net approval swing after 9/11. We have not seen a politician become this popular this fast since George Bush after the largest terrorist attack in U.S. history. Kamala's campaign is doing a hell of a job of painting her with a good story, with a good platform, and she's making connections to people. The places where that she is doing the best right now, the way that what she's doing so successfully is she's uniting the Democratic base in a way that Joe Biden was simply failing to do. Joe Biden was failing to get young voters. He was failing to consolidate the African American vote. She isn't having that problem. Okay, she's winning voters 18 to 34, 57 to 34%. She's winning black voters 85% to 7%. She's winning women voters 58% to 37%. one thing that I want to note here is that this is the largest gender gap we've ever had in American politics right now. Okay, there's about a 30 percentage point difference between the men who support Trump and the females who support Kamala. There's a 30-point swing in between those two groups. It's an insanely divided country along gender lines right now. Okay, she's even doing extremely well with white voters with college degrees, 59% to 38%. And she's even winning independents, 43% to 35%. So all along the board, she's uniting this base that Biden was not able to do. She's doing well, much better with Hispanic voters than Joe Biden was. We should talk about in another video about how Kamala Harris is talking to Hispanic voter concerns in a way that Joe Biden or even Barack Obama was unable to do. And we'll talk about her different strategy there. But she's uniting this base against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is failing to capitalize on the I'll say minimal, but there are flaws in Kamala's performance so far. She still loses to Trump on two major issues when asked: inflation and the economy overall. Okay, and so when we look at these two issues, voters think that Donald Trump is better handling the inflation by 8 points. They think that Trump will be better at handling the economy by 9 points. I don't agree. Okay, I think Trump would be a disaster for inflation given his 10% to 20% tariffs on all imports. I don't think he would be good for the economy given that those tariffs will drive investment costs up, making it harder for businesses to invest in a bunch of different goods. I think he would be bad for the economy by blowing up the deficit, by giving out corporate tax breaks and all the rest. But that's a whole other conversation. Okay, my opinion it doesn't matter for this analysis. But what I want to talk about here is, yes, Donald Trump is up 8 with the inflation argument, whether you agree with it or not. However, back in July, he was up against Joe Biden with that inflation number by 22%. Okay, so there's a swing happening here of voters going, oh, we approve of Trump 22%, down to 8% on inflation, 22% on the economy to 9% on the economy. Kamala Harris is making inroads on these issues. And then she's winning the abortion issue by 20. She's winning the issue of treating immigrants fairly and humanely by 20. She's winning the issue of healthcare. She's winning the issue of gun violence. If she's winning all those issues and then closing the gaps on these other issues, Donald Trump isn't even going to have a lane to run down. And so he obviously, if I was to be giving advice to him, he should be focusing on these issues, but he's unable to do so. He has never been a consistent candidate. He's never been one for discipline, and he's always going to go on huge, obnoxious rambles about Haitians eating cats and dogs and being the most divisive person in America. And when we talk about him being the most divisive person in America, it's funny because his approval rating has almost been flat over the last 4 years. In this NBC poll, they've been tracking Trump's approval rating, and it's hovered between 40% down to like 35%. Right now, it's at 40%. Okay? Well, you tell me. He's been unable to expand his base over the last 4 years. You think he's going to be able to expand his base over the next 2 months of the election? No. The answer is no, okay? And a really good example of this is when we look into the approval ratings of all these different candidates, okay? Let's look at the approval ratings of all the candidates and some other key words that have been hot button issues related to the campaign here. When we look at how popular Donald Trump is, how popular Kamala Harris is, and all the rest, and Tim Walz, we'll talk about him too, but Kamala Harris, like I said, positive rating 48%, negative rating 45%. When we look at Donald Trump, positive rating 40%, negative rating 53%. Okay, that's 53% of the population that doesn't like you. It's not even like they're unsure about you. It's 53% that just don't like you. Pretty hard to win an election when more than 50% of the country don't like you. And then, hey, maybe his VP pick was able to moderate a little bit. Maybe his VP pick was able to help. His JD Vance has been on the campaign trail. He's been on the Sunday shows. Maybe the people have gotten some insight out of him that they like, and maybe they'll hold their nose and vote for Trump because maybe his vice president will keep him in line. No, because the only man more hated in America than Donald Trump is JD Vance. JD Vance has an approval rating of 32% with an unapproval of 45%. Okay, so Donald Trump effectively picked the only person out of running that was more unpopular than him in all of America. Now, let's look at the opposite side of the coin. Who did Kamala Harris pick? Kamala Harris picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a guy nobody knew, but he looks like a shaven Santa Claus, okay? And his positive approval is 40%. His negative approval is 33%. He's at +7 net approval. That makes him the most popular politician they polled on here and makes him more popular than Taylor Swift. All right, so Kamala Harris, hands off to you for picking that guy. That was my top pick. I'm glad you went through with it. Very happy about it. Very excited about Tim Walz. And the only thing more popular than all of these things on this list that they polled was capitalism at 51% approval, 25% disapproval. Funny enough, they polled how Project 2025 sounded, okay? And that got 4% approval, which means that socialism is more in line with what Americans want to see by this poll than Project 2025. So hats off to you at the Heritage Foundation by uniting America in the hatred of conservative ideals. Thank you for putting it all down on paper so that all of us could point, ridicule, laugh, and make fun of your ridiculous policy proposals and exposing yourself for the inhumane animals that you actually are. So thank you for doing all that. I appreciate that. Crazy that they wrote all that stuff down. Truly is. So here we are. We only have a month and a half until the election, 44 days or something like that. And then it will all be over. We even see Kamala Harris jumping up in the polls in Pennsylvania, 5%. If Kamala wins Pennsylvania by 5%, this election's over. And that's not even to talk about what's going on in North Carolina right now. We put a video out on Mark Robinson and his absolute train wreck of a past. We recommend you watch that. But we got more news about Mark Robinson that we're going to talk about in a video coming up tomorrow.
So, we have a Patreon. And since you made it to the end of the episode, that means that maybe you are somewhat interested in the content we make, which, let me say, that's awesome.
That's so cool that you think that we have good takes enough for you to watch our stuff. That means a lot.
Thank you so much. You're probably wrong, but we'll take it. If you want to support the show, and we post exclusive content on there, so if you want to see more of that, see us go deeper onto a few other topics, maybe some of the stuff we post on there is stuff that we think the normies on YouTube might be a little bit less interested in, but the nerds that want to go to Patreon are more interested in. Feel free to check it out. There's going to be a link in the video description. There's a link in the channel description as well.
Perfect.
We would super appreciate it.
Love you guys.